Welcome to everyone on this very cold and additional snowy day. For many of us, ongoing snow, being here in Kalamazoo and highly affected by lake effect snow. I'm assuming others are as well. I can see that we have some of our coming presenters with us. So welcome to our presenter guests who are joining us today too. We are going to give folks just a few minutes to join. We're imagining that a lot of people were like you and they were kind of working right up until this meeting started. So we'll just give them a few more minutes to arrive. Yes, take a look at the chat and it helps us so much to understand what region everyone is from. So thank you for those that have been able to go ahead and make that change. Welcome to everyone. Just in case you didn't hear, we're just giving folks a few more minutes to arrive before we get started. Excited to see everybody today. Hopefully, everyone is staying warm as you can, despite the vortex of polar air or whichever vortex we're currently under. Welcome, Woody. We haven't seen you for a while. Nice to see you. I can see you have your hat on, so clearly you are in my vein of you are working hard to stay warm. So. All right, we're just going to give folks one more minute or so before we start. Jane, how are we doing with our presenters?
I'm seeing our first presenter is here, Emma, and I think I saw Tony. So we're
Welcome,
good for our
Tony.
first presenters for sure. So that's a good start.
Excellent. All right. Okay, Sable, why don't we go ahead and we'll just sort of ease our way in here. Welcome to everyone. I'm Joan Blau. I'm the Vice President for Innovation and Evaluation here at the Early Childhood Investment Corporation. And in that role, I am oversee the work of the regional childcare coalitions and have the privilege to support all of you. We've got some amazing presentations coming to you today from Region 7. From Emma Boswick and Tony Willis. We'll let them introduce themselves a little bit more when we get started. So thank you so much in advance for sharing the great work that you're doing. We also have guests from Region 8, Christine Shedderin and Emily Rao, who are here to talk about ECHO, which is a region-specific innovation that the two of them are leading. And maybe you two want to just give a little hand up. There they are. We're excited to have them with us today. And then we have our colleagues from Region 1. Christopher Germain, I know that Lisa is here with us today, and Deb Dupra. So we got the full knowledge package coming at you from Region 1 to talk about the work they're doing with Spark, which is an incubator for home-based childcare that connects with their family childcare networks. Also joining us today will be Erin Watson, who's our evaluator, Jane Teagan, who is helping us to pull together these PLCs and support our behind the scenes work, and our Sable Carter is helping to make sure that we all get to the right breakout rooms, which is so important when the time comes. Okay, Sable, we can move ahead. Our focus today is really on childcare business supports. This is a key aspect of the Regional Childcare Coalition work, and we're excited to share with you today great examples of work that is happening both within our own state and within being carried out by your colleagues, but also to share some additional resources, which I'll be talking about soon. Um, our agenda is going to start with doing some introductions, which I'll talk more about in a moment. We'll then move into our learning topic. Then we're going to have a time to go into breakout rooms and do a little debrief after that. I do want to just flag for people that you're going to have a choice in terms of your breakout room. So if you are here with multiple colleagues from your organization, you should be thinking about how to spread the love so that both of you don't go to the same breakout room, and that you're making sure that you're going to rooms where you're going to learn the most, and have your interests covered across the three topics. Next slide. Before we begin, I just want to have everybody take a moment to pause. Maybe for you, you just want to take a deep breath and just come all the way here. You made it here. We're together again. And we use these working agreements so that everybody knows like how we intend to be with each other today. So just take a moment to review those. And then if anyone identifies something that they would like us to have as a working agreement that we don't currently have up on the slide, please just raise your hand, unmute, and we're happy to have further conversation. All right. I do not see anyone that is worrying about adding a working agreement. So I'm excited today. We're going to use a little bit of a different method for our connecting activity. We're going to use what's called a Chatterfall method. So I'm going to give you just a few moments to think about this check in question and type your response in the chat. Don't hit enter yet because I'm going to count down from 3 to 1. So I'm just going to let everybody have a minute. All right, I'm going to start the countdown. So 3, 2, 1. Go ahead and press enter. I see many different thoughts and ideas in here, things that many of us would be excited about. Correcting the mismatch between the true cost of care and market rates and what families can afford. Certainly one of the crux issues that we see. Yes, the Bureau of Fire Safety delays. Those are incredibly problematic and unfortunately have delayed childcare businesses getting started. I see lots of folks talking about wages being able to shift, and being able to promote more qualified workers. Staffing remains a huge issue. The ability to help people with being able to manage more efficiently and get more support with administrative tasks associated with getting paid. Um, Time to get all the things completed. Absolutely. Especially for home-based providers. Often they're doing literally everything, which is so challenging. Taxes, definitely an ongoing problem, a challenge, especially for home-based providers. And thank you, Tony, for participating. Definitely, thin margins are a gigantic issue for this industry. Thank you to everybody. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense. Like if you see others who are working and caring about similar things, that's a real opportunity for you to connect with them outside of this meeting if you'd like to do more. And of course, as you saw after our last PLC, we did a follow-up for people that were interested. So if folks have raised challenges that you'd like to spend more time talking about with a small group, let us know and we're happy to get you together. So let's move on. Why are we talking about childcare business supports? Well, as you all know, it's goal 4 of our work with MyLeap. And it's really reflective of the experience of childcare. Like traditionally, the business side is really challenging, that people enter childcare as a business owner from the perspective of, in general, most of the time, wanting to offer their gifts and talents as teachers and people that like spending time with children. And they haven't necessarily come into it because they have a strong desire to be an effective business owner. And traditionally, we've also seen that organizations that other industries can go to if they want to be an entrepreneur have not necessarily been made available or accessible to the childcare industry. And I think what we find as we do this work and we hear from all of you that while childcare is a business like other businesses, it also has unique attributes that set it apart from other business types, and that we need to make sure that the business supports that are provided are customizable and need to be specific and intentional, and really meet business owners where they are. Nationally, we see a number of state level initiatives that are leading the way. Many of these initiatives were initially supported by ARPA funding, and they continue because they're needed. We provide them here as links to you, and we will also make sure that these go into the TA resource library. If you're somebody that really benefits from learning from what other states are doing and thinking about how to adapt that, please do check these out. And we're happy to support making connections if that's helpful to you, so that all of us can really benefit from that. What we found when we looked for resources is that the smaller regional examples, like what you all are working on, haven't been happening necessarily as much in the sense of being documented in the literature, so we could find them. But as throughout today, you'll see that there's going to be a number of opportunities, and there's no wrong time to put into the chat other resources that you might be using that you have found helpful and would like to make sure are shared with everyone in terms of how you're thinking about your region's own childcare business supports. So, one of the things that we see across these different statewide initiatives are these kind of commonalities. So, these are the kinds of things that folks are really wanting support with, and so that these different initiatives are tackling. So, you can see many of these align with the kind of things that you wish you could change. So, things from licensing support to wraparound services to helping people actually launch or expand. What is less common are things like shared services, which is happening in Wisconsin, back office financial support, like from an organization like the Child Care Back Office that we have in Region 3, or helping people really connect with other providers. If we think about the theory of change framework, which I know all of you are familiar with, these kind of state efforts are really kind of straddling between those sustainable systems changes that we want to see happening and with helping people just kind of get through the hoops. So, kind of dealing with system realities. So, there's a wide range of approaches being used. We wanted to include this little citation here from this Stateline article, that doing this work can, for an EDO, can maybe present some moments of culture shock. That it's quite different to come to understand childcare, perhaps from other businesses. And I'll be interested as we hear from our EDOs here today. Was there shock for you? Did you learn things about childcare as a business that helps you understand how different that can be. Um, and so, as we move to learn more from our regional partners, I'm really going to encourage everyone to use the chat to share your questions and experiences. So, what are regions already doing? They are responding to the need, exclamation point. There's a lot of different things going on out there. You can see that we have flagged what you're going to be hearing about today. But there's lots going on around comprehensive technical assistance and referrals. We're also seeing a lot of outreach happening. So, childcare businesses are getting more knowledge and more understanding of kind of what the landscape of business support services looks like. We're definitely seeing provider networks. And then we've got, of course, what you all wrote in your plans. And since many of you have recently participated in our progress meetings, we've been learning from all of you. So here are some of the things people are really thinking about, like how might the creation of a directory of available business support services be made available more broadly? So it's not dependent on an individual childcare business owner asking the right questions, that it's something that is accessible to all. We've got regions who are thinking about really trying to make licensing guides that are much more step by step, knowing that's a huge process. Um, and then creating resources to know that providers know about financing options, and thinking a lot about how they could take existing resources, let's say something that might be happening more often for other industries like boot camp type deals. How do you turn those into something that might be helpful for a prospective childcare business owner or for somebody that wants to expand? And so we are going to shift now into our regional examples. And again, don't forget to use the chat to ask questions and share your experience. We know there's probably more going on than we've been able to yet lift up. We know you're doing so many things, but help us understand what you're trying and what's working as we hear from our partners. So I'm going to turn it over to Region 7.
Thank you, Joan. Can everyone hear me okay? Awesome. Well, really appreciate the invitation to talk a little bit about kind of what our agency does, who we are, and how we're connecting on the kind of business side of it. So if you don't mind just clicking to the next slide, I'll kind of do an overview of who we are. So again, we're the Lansing Economic Area Partnership. So we are the regional economic development organization for Ingham, Clinton, and Eaton counties. We co-lead our coalition, and I saw a few partners on the call here as well with Capital Area Michigan Works. So that's our local Michigan Works office. And then United Way of South Central Michigan, we work with PSC to help our facilitation and on-the-ground consulting services. So specific to the Lansing Economic Area Partnership, we're actually entering our 20th anniversary. So we've been around a little while. As you all know, we're all divided into these regions. So we've been identified as the economic development organization for this area. We are a private public partnership. So we are a 501c6 agency. And we have about 80 total members representative of the region. 3/4 are private industry, and the other quarter is roughly public industry. So our local institutions like Lansing Community College, Michigan State University, etc. We are supporting the Capital Area Child Care Coalition, CACCCs, lots of C's in general. But we actually were a small business entrepreneurship kind of business agency prior to entering into this childcare space. So if you don't mind just going to the next slide, and then I'll hand it off to my colleague who's also joined on the call. Just to provide some context, our region is about 470,000 in population, roughly between 0 and 95,000 kiddos. And we have roughly 400 licensed childcare providers. And one of the things that we also acknowledge is that we're within a 90-minute driving distance of 90% of the population, which also means we have a lot of commuting traffic in and out of our region. So that was really interesting, especially in the beginning of the action plan development, way back when in 2023, just seeing kind of the commuting patterns and how that obviously translates to childcare connection and all of those things. So we're here today. My colleague Tony Willis, if you don't mind going to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about our entrepreneurial support ecosystem that is here in our region and our small business development that we partner with the state agency, Michigan Economic Development Corporation. And I'm super excited to have Tony to talk a little bit about it because he's our Chief Equitable Development Officer and has been leading a lot of our small business initiatives, even prior to when I started at Leap, not aging Tony at all. But he'll talk a little bit about kind of what our small business development team does and all the amazing work, including the small business support hub, which I know we've mentioned a few times. So, Tony, I'll hand it over to you. Thanks for joining.
Absolutely. Thank you, Emma. And thank you all for allowing me to present with Emma today. It's my pleasure. Tony Willis again. I'm the Chief Equity Development Officer at the Lansing Economic Area Partnership. I've been there for nearing 13 years. So yeah, Emma, it's been some time in the profession here. I spent most of my career focused on the small business support side. So everything from your traditional Main Street businesses all the way to tech transfer in relations to the university or high tech innovation as a whole. And then more specifically in recent years, a direct focus on intentional outreach to diverse and underserved communities and groups throughout the Lansing region as a whole. So right here you see our whole team that we have, a small but mighty team doing the great work for Region 7. That's kind of the theme for LEAP as a whole, small but mighty in many ways there. And so what we see here is a level of experiences ranging from one-on-one supports for entrepreneurs to facilitation of programs and cohort-based models, as well as some funding opportunities, both for traditional and high-tech space. So those are all of my whole team's different areas of expertise. I kind of summed up in that. If we could proceed to the next slide. So one of the key tools that we developed over the last few years was the TREC Hub, which is the Tri-County Resource for Entrepreneurs Knowledge Hub. Kind of like Star Trek, and it was, some type of name to throw out there for this for this resource hub for entrepreneurship. And as Emma mentioned, one of the best things about LEAP is that we are the economic development organization for the region, but we're also a ESO, entrepreneurial support organization. Lansing is unique that where LEAP has been both one of the key ESOs and the EDO for the region. So it's kind of a unique double housing of both in one entity. So this TREC Hub program was a program that's funded under the Small Business Support Hub, which was through a federal funding mechanism that took place through ARPA. Monies went to the state of Michigan, and then the state of Michigan through the MEDC created a competitive application where different regions could compete to get funding to pretty much shore up and develop new programs to support entrepreneurship in their geographic locations. And so we were awarded just that in 2024. We received in tranches, but a 3-year commitment of roughly $3.2 million to create this program. And this program allowed us to create a overarching hub and spoke model. So we are the hub and we have direct contracts with other ESOs throughout the greater Lansing region. So we were able to supply those other ESOs funding so they could better operate their programs. And then this hub and spoke model also allows us to create a universal application, which is our TREC application. Well, I'll talk about that later on in a couple more slides here, but the TREC application is where that any client in the Tri-County region, okay, we go here now. Any client can go to this portal here and fill out their information. And they can select between a LEAP program or let's say a Lansing EDC program or the Downtown Lansing Inc.'s program or the FLEDGE. These are all regional, unique entrepreneurial support organizations. So LEAP this is the main funnel. Then through that, they can be directed to their unique individual listings of support offerings, but then allows us to better collect data on what's taking place in the region as a whole. And so it was very tough before this, where we had a very, disparate amount of one-off reporting. Now we have a overall survey tool, which allows us to better read uh, the success and the climate of the entrepreneurs that we're servicing through this hub. We do this once a year, and this is our second year doing it. September, we received data from 400 small businesses that we served through our collective Spoke Hub program. And we were able to find everything from job growth for all those small businesses, financing, access to capital, new market entry, new products. All that information is collected in this Spoken Hub model. But as this relates to childcare, we know that childcare is a business in itself and that we're very intentional. We want to make sure that have a specific outreach to as many industries that make up the small business fabric in the community. And we've had a number of folks come through the Trek Hub portal here that are childcare facilitators, from the at-home practitioner like Mama. I've used some names out here, some of the local businesses. Mama B's Childcare is a at-home childcare facility, all the way to Little Dreamers Early Childcare, which has a facility, and they've both taken part of LEAP programs that we offer. We have a program dedicated for early entrepreneurs, which Mama B was, and has grown since from then, which is called One and All, focused on individuals that are at or below a certain economic or a household income level. And that we know that entrepreneurship is a wealth building tool, and we want to supply individuals as much information as possible, education, to let them grow and blossom through that, all the way to Elevate, which is a unique program focused on Black entrepreneurs, which Jacqueline went through, for individuals that are more seasoned and are looking for more expansion opportunities. So Jacqueline was a program participant of Elevate. And then furthermore, we worked with other groups like the Athena PowerLink group to provide additional consulting for a number of small businesses as a whole. So through this Trek Hub model, entrepreneurs of all industries, from food to childcare to med tech to creative tech, this is your single entry point. You can select a myriad of resources, ones that Leap offers directly or our partners offer. And then we can better data collect as a whole, and then share and point those entrepreneurs from one program to another. So you're not just lost from, "Hey, I graduated this program, now where do I go?" We have an individual on our team that is like the air traffic controller that will help those individuals navigate from one program to another. Uh, so as a whole, this allows us to have better cohesion and connectivity to the entrepreneurs in our ecosystem and us as entrepreneur support organizations. And so that's the overview of the uniqueness here. We've had, I can't say the exact amount. I should have ran a report for the next code for childcare. Thought about that, Emma, but my
No, I
apologies.
did it. I already did it.
Oh, you did it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Of course. That is Emma for you. She's always there of all the information. But I'll pass to you, Emma, for the next slide here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Tony. And where Tony was going was just we, as part of that kind of air traffic control, recognized this was a wonderful opportunity, especially because we didn't have really a regional coalition. That was obviously the part of the goals that were set out to achieve, but we really wanted to provide that direct outreach, the invitation directly to childcare providers to join in this entrepreneurial support system. So we actually did direct mailers to the for-profit childcare providers, inviting them to participate in this Trek Hub, if you will, this support hub. We also specifically did geo-targeted ads using social media platforms, in addition, in partnership with other agencies, to really try and encourage childcare providers to seek out these free resources, which is a really big deal. The fact that they're free in here, in addition to doing some targeted segments as well on our local news channel. And so we really supported and tried to build up this network so that we could have this entryway, if you will, into these programs, whether or not you're maybe just a really early stage provider who maybe is doing it out of your home, which we know is often where it starts, to perhaps your kind of middle stage providers who are kind of looking for that next stage, as Tony mentioned with Jacqueline Taylor and Little Dreamers Early Childhood Center. They were taking that next step. They needed that additional support in evaluating their financials and their procurement, where their cost savings. We supported them with site searches as well to find additional real estate to expand to. And so it's all of those pieces that are so critical. And we know that it's important to encourage and help providers as well kind of connect these dots. So we really tried to target folks directly into supporting and being a participant, whether it's with LEAP programming directly, as Tony mentioned, or our other program partners, so that we can better build the connectivity. But I think always encouraging and being that front door is so incredibly important, and making sure that they feel invited to the table. That was a big conversation of ours, is, what is different between just sending out a random email blast and actually doing that personal mailer or targeted, this is for you, kind of messaging. So that's just a super high level. I've seen some questions. I'm not sure how much time we have, but that just concludes kind of the core part, but we're happy to answer questions and all that good stuff. I also just want to be mindful of time. So.
Thank you so much. We do have a few minutes for questions. Thanks, Tony, for answering the one about cost. It looks like we also have a question about where would the folks on this call learn about the ESOs in their regions, either for Emma or Tony?
Yeah, we're spot on. I guess the best way to learn from the ESOs in your region would be through, there's one, the hubs, for Emma just posted in the chat. Also, talk to your local EDO. Typically, there are a number of larger and smaller ones throughout the community. Not all EDOs are as connected to some, but let's say if you were in the Metro Detroit region, TechTown would be the one to go to. TechTown would be your main ESO that's very well connected to all other, not a negative term, but micro ESOs throughout the Metro Detroit geography. If you were in, let's say, Mount Pleasant, Central Michigan University Research Corridor, corporation, CMURC will be the main one, attached to many others. Flint, I'm just throwing out a few out here. I won't have for each one, but Flint, I would say 100K Ideas is the main one, most notable, and they can tie into the other ones that provide services as well. So those are a few. And I guess I'll say for the West Coast, Start Garden will be your one out that way. Start Garden from the West Coast will be the main ESO who's well connected to the other micro ESOs.
And
Thank
I
you,
also
Tony.
popped in the chat the Small Business Support Hub Finder, and also a plug for Michigan Small Business Development, who also kind of partners often with those ESOs, or can also act as like a gateway into those other local ones.
Thank you so much. Do we have other questions? It's perfectly fine to unmute and just ask your question directly.
I
So
don't
this
have
is
a
Jordan.
question. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Carrie, I already asked one. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I appreciate all that Tony and Emma do. I don't think, given things I've heard in other parts of the state, that it's typical for the way that LEAP has invested in small business, and especially in the childcare space. So I just want to thank them both for their leadership in this space. They're very, very intentional about looking at supporting small businesses of all different industries and from equity lens. And so just wanted to give a little shout out to them for some regional love from Region 7.
Absolutely. Jordan, would you like to go ahead and ask your question before we close out this question section?
Yeah, and I think it's a general question. As I continue to learn about all of the different places I, as a business owner, could seek professional development and support, I am curious what coordination could be done to support making sure all of that professional development qualifies as required professional development for our childcare business owners. Because right now, I'm assuming the majority of these items are not approved in MI registry and would not count towards mandatory professional
We
development for our
wish,
business
right?
owners.
We wish. We've actually investigated as part of that. And honestly, Jordan, like in full transparency, it's a complicated process to be
Yeah.
approved, especially because our programs, and I mean, it kind of existed before there was the integration in between. So, like One and All, for example, what Tony had mentioned, like that's a very specific curriculum-based cohort model with coaching and mentoring integrated, and that is so hard to have it like in a statewide approval piece. But I totally agree. Like it would make sense. It's just like the how of it and not being overly burdensome also to our program partners has been like it was one of our first action items actually when we were initially discussing it way back when in the planning phase. But you're right. I mean, 100%.
I echo that, Emma. So, Jordan, great question and thought for sure. We've been approached by, Lance Community College and regarding how can we make some of these for credit. Like, take this class, it covers a lot of business basics and their business 201 or, could this be a credit bearing class or curriculum? We haven't crossed that on the educational or academia front, but when it comes to even a statewide, what you call it, advanced knowledge, the continuing educational credits side, it would be awesome to have that, but that's earlier on than we're at the moment.
And then do we have time for Kathy's question? If not, I can work with Kathy offline.
Let's yeah, let's maybe do that offline.
Okay. Kathy,
And
I'll follow up
or
with
in
you.
the chat if you've got a wider answer so everybody can see. Thank you so much, Region 7. Remember, Region 7 is going to be in a breakout. So if you have further questions and want to pick their mind further, you're going to have an opportunity to do that. So we're going to go ahead and shift now to Region 8, and I will turn it over to all of you.
Well, hello, can you hear us okay? We're going to put a big asterisk on our presentation. There is no school today, so there are children in this area. Don't worry, they're being supervised. But my name's Christine Shetrin.
And I'm Emily Rao.
And up until the end of May, we had owned childcare in home and in a center spanning 25 years. We did everything from national accreditation to early Head Start Family Child Care Partnership provider to Emily was a GSRP, even a GSRP inclusion teacher for over 8 years, along with our center. And at the end of May, we didn't have enough quality staff to continue our center. And there were funding issues. I'm a big business person. I crunched my numbers, and there was no way our rural area down here in St. Joseph County would be able to support me turning back to private pay only. So 93% of our income was contracted. So that's who we are. And we just want to say that our work, we've been doing this work for years and years. We just created a company now to continue it. So if you could do the next slide, please. All right. And so what we do is we do 4 quarterly meetings for our local childcare providers. We do have 4 under our belt so far, and we wanted to share some of the things that we have learned along the way. And we really use this pyramid model when we talk about our meetings and do our topics. We understand some of them come with a longer journey than others. Some are at the very beginning of their journey. Some have been doing it a long time. But yet they haven't had access to some of the things that maybe we had. So that's our, effective workforce. We're working on that. Next slide, please. And out of 59 childcare licenses in our county, 25 are centers, including GSRPs, 12 are family homes, and 24 are group homes. We've had a total of 19 providers that have attended our meetings, and actually one parent showed up, which was welcomed. And it's a variety from centers to home providers to GSRP staff.
And I think it's important to know that our county is very rural. And so including GSRPs was very intentional in its thought, as we have to work together to better the childcare in our county, and they're licensed as childcare centers. And so right now we're just trying to build those gaps between in-home providers, group providers, and childcare centers and GSRPs. To show them that we're all in this together. We all have the same issues. We all don't have enough time in our day to get all the things we need done. And so that was intentional to include them as well.
All right, our next slide, please. So some of the things we've learned, we ask our providers what they want to have the next topic of the next meeting be. And these were the topics of our meeting so far. We did combating provider burnout, how to stay in this hard work when you are putting in 10, 12, 14 hours a day sometimes. And then we also did a meeting just listing all the resources that are available to providers. I think a lot of providers don't understand the language of early childhood and of the business. And then challenging behaviors, how to build a brain. That was more along trauma-informed practices, brain development, trainings that they may not have had before. And then coming up in April, we have bridging enrollment gaps. Currently in our county, we have providers that always have been, completely booked out with 2-year waiting lists, and they still have a waiting list, but it's only 0 to 3 or 3.5. So their older age groups are going unfilled. And how do we do that? And we are giving them some of our tips and tricks.
And then during each of these meetings, we're also very intentional to start out the beginning of the meeting with just some different business practices that they can implement. So for combating provider burnout, it was more of a get to know us type of meeting. But for the resources for early childhood, that very conveniently fell after our recent state budget was passed. And so we did dive a lot into what that means specifically for our county. And the loss of the Great Star Collaborative was very heart-wrenching for our community, as it's so ingrained in everything early childhood. And so we kind of looked at the nuances of that. And then for challenging behaviors, we went into a lot of the child development and care scholarship nuances and how to keep accurate records. And so we build those within our trainings. And so challenging behaviors was our most requested training that providers wanted. And I think it helped them understand the different nuances within combating your burnout as well. If you want to move on to the next slide.
So Emily and I really thought we were dialed in to childcare in our county. People would call us, ask us questions, ask if we had, things that they could share, we could share with them. And in our work with providers, we really found that, how should I say, we didn't understand some of the challenges that providers were facing that weren't partnering with like a GSRP or an early Head Start. So during our reaching out to providers, just emailing something, fewest responses. And we found that providers don't have a separate email for their business. It's all in their personal email and it goes right on by. So then at our next meeting, we actually sent out physical invitations through the United States Post Office, and our RSVPs went from like 8 to 18. And we're like, whoa, that got us a lot. Well, then in the next meeting, this past meeting, it was about 12:30 in the afternoon, and I texted every family and group home provider in our county. And I said, listen, I'm texting because I know it's nap time. And nobody calls at nap time. We understand this. We got a 72% response rate, which I think is amazing. And some providers even took it. Oh, I was thinking about you the other day. I had a question. Can you help me with this? Or I had a question on, how to do this. What do you do? So the text messages really went beyond just I can come or I can't come. So that really led us to believe that providers really want and need personal engagement. Okay, next slide. So in our feedback from providers, we've learned that some of them don't know the resources available. They don't know early on or special education. We personally had to fight for our rights to be the general education teacher in any IFSP or IEP meeting. And it seemed as a new early on provider came on, we had to re-educate that, oh, you have to invite us to these things. But providers don't know that. There's also a gap in they want to do high quality learning environments. They simply don't know how. They only know what they've been doing and what has been handed down to them. And then in our area also, we are very rural. A lot of providers only have their phone to work with. And they don't have access to internet, or it's a dish satellite
internet that goes out with wind or storm, or if you're in a wooded area, you're not getting the internet that you need. And so that was a big barrier. And then along with the technology piece, we do have providers that just aren't comfortable using technology. They're not sure how to digitize their receipts and work with different programs to maximize enrollment and do timekeeping things. And so that is also something that we're working through and working with providers on that.
How to save time with technology. Providers we found don't know how to navigate even like a Google workspace, how to correct their filing system. I did it wrong for years until I got a bookkeeper, and then she's like, no, you file it like this. And I was like, that makes so much more sense. And they also aren't participating in the software that's available for very low cost. The one I used and I'm familiar with was KidCare. It's now called Parachute. They simply don't know how to navigate that. And without a program to navigate their receipts, their time, they don't have a good bead on their business until it's tax season, because they have no idea what their time space percentage is currently. So helping with that, QuickBooks is not friendly to home child cares. I did use QuickBooks at our center. It worked well for that, but not family and home providers. And then finding quality staff. We keep saying, where's the quality staff? Well, we have to build it. We have to teach our staff what developmentally appropriate practices are and what a high quality learning environment looks like.
And to go along with high quality environments, I think it's important to note that curriculums that might be needed for in-home childcares or childcare centers are sometimes not accessible due to the cost. So looking at a high scope curriculum, for infants and toddlers, it's a little less expensive. You're looking at $636 for the curriculum, but that doesn't include all the supporting things that go along with it. So it's about $60 a book if you would like to go and purchase other materials. For high scope for preschoolers, that's even more expensive. That's what's used mainly in GSRPs and our early Head Start family child care partnerships. In our county, the preschool curriculum is $1,994. And then again, you're looking at $60 a book add-on. And that's not including the assessment system that you have to pay for separately to keep track of child data and child growth. There is a creative curriculum specific for family child care. Unfortunately, it's the most expensive, and that comes in at $2,285 for this curriculum set. And I would like to note that also doesn't include the training that goes with each curriculum that I argue is more important than having the books, right? And so you're looking about $750 to learn how to use that curriculum and learn how to use developmentally appropriate practice and have the high quality learning environments. And so that's something we also hope to bring in with these Child Care Coalition meetings. We hope to bring some of that in our knowledge and other people's knowledge. And so we can build that up for free within childcare. This is you.
So one of my biggest stressors as a home provider and a center provider in all the things, I access my small business development regional SCORE, it was called, support, but I knew it was there, right? But trying to link the food program with licensing, with the GSRP or Early Head Start. In our center, we had to take attendance every single day in 4 different programs. And that's a lot. I mean, it's a lot. So the things that we do, for example, for providers that we have shared a couple times now at our meetings, is we had developed a sign-in, sign-out sheet for parents that tracked meals, that met licensing, it met the food program requirement, it met the child care scholarship requirement. You could track your child present hours, you could track your other hours. It was all on one sheet, and you just scan it every week, put it into Google Drive, and you have it. But it linked all of those systems together. Now, I think that's where we come in, because we've navigated all of those things all together and we knew how to mesh, so we're trying to open all those doors, because there are some things that providers are just keeping that door shut to that room because they don't understand it. They don't understand the language, and it's too much. It's too much at the end of the day to think about. Like Great Start to Quality. Everything we do, we are trying to tie it to some standard in their Great Start to Quality, so that we can say, okay, you shared this resource with your parents, now upload it as evidence. So you aren't trying to do that right at the end of your 2 years and think back, that you're thinking about that every week as you go on. All right, well, that is the end of our slides. I don't know if anybody has questions.
I think we have time for maybe 1 or maybe 2 very, very burning questions. Otherwise, our colleagues from Region 8 are going to be in a breakout room, so you will be able to pick their brains even more. Do we have any burning questions that we want to ask our friends before we shift to our last presenters?
I've got, I think, a quick question. So I think a lot of the thinking behind the family childcare networks is that home-based childcare has particular interests and concerns that, are distinct and should be treated seriously and separately from those of folks that are involved in center-based care. But you obviously don't approach it that way. I think it seems like you're saying there's enough common ground for the topics that you're covering in your workshops that people can come together regardless of whether they're operating a big center with, different types of classrooms or they're operating a home-based program. Just any thoughts on that?
Yes, I totally agree. The one big defining factor between home and center is the time space percentage and how you track your receipts. The food program is quite different in a center compared to a home. That was a big stressor in a center setting. But you have, what we found in our work is that you have centers in homes that go to food banks, like I did, to try and serve the children. You have providers that don't really understand what the time space percentage is, or even how to track it, or how to delegate certain things onto teachers, because you don't have a good system set up where the teachers alone can track their food program attendance. It's those little nuances. The information is out there, the support's out there. How do we capture it and get it going up the line?
And look forward to you joining a breakout session, and folks will have a chance to ask even more questions. So I'm going to shift us to our last presentation. Please go ahead, Region 1.
Cool. Hey, everyone. I popped in and out a couple of times, so I'm glad I could get back in. My name is Christopher Germain. I'm the CEO of the Lake Superior Community Partnership. I'm coming at you from a hotel lobby where I know a lot of people. So if you see me wave, just to tell people I'm on a webinar. So my room's not ready yet. So we want to talk with you a little bit about Childcare Spark. Childcare Spark is, in its purest form, a home-based childcare business incubator. It's a dedicated incubator to helping folks who are interested in creating childcare businesses in their own homes use basically that key asset, right, which is their home. So we are based in Marquette County. Spark is now a UP-wide program, but it got started in Marquette County. The Lake Superior Community Partnership, which operates Spark, is actually pretty similar to LEAP. So we're a combined chamber and economic development organization. We are also the Central UP Small Business Hub. We work on housing issues, childcare issues, air service issues, energy, healthcare. Basically anything that we view as a barrier to economic development in Marquette County falls into our area. So childcare was obviously one of those things pretty early on in my tenure. I've been in the role almost 4 years now. My first meeting was actually about childcare. I was sitting in Grand Rapids in my downtown apartment where I don't have any kids, talking about childcare as the new CEO of this organization, having no clue why we were even having that conversation. I usually get a laugh out of Deb, but Deb's looking very seriously now. So I do have two other folks from our coalition on here, Deb and Lisa. So they're going to kind of pipe in if I forget anything or get it super wrong. I'm also going to try to make sure that I'm a little cognizant of time here. So I want to talk with, you're welcome, Joan. I saw your head go. So Childcare Spark really is it's an incubator. It's exactly what you would expect from a traditional business incubator, but it's designed specifically for childcare businesses and homes. So it combines the best of a business incubator with early childhood education best practices. So that's where Deb's team and our ISD and others kind of come in. So the way Spark works today is folks who enter the program have access to 3 online modules. And a module is a whole collection of various courses and homework assignments and steps that you have to take that walk you through not only how to operate a childcare business, but how to make a sustainable one that actually can survive in the long run. In addition to those modules, they also have coaching sessions with early childhood education professionals like Deb's team and our Marquette Algerisa. They get business coaching, so one-on-one coaching with my team at the Lake Superior Community Partnership. They were assigned a mentor, so somebody who was operating an existing childcare business in their home already, so they can talk about those things that we're not thinking about talking about in those courses. For example, we had a question about insurance one time and somebody was in the cohort. We just all looked at each other. We're like, we don't know. And they just started answering it themselves. But the mentors are also helping them through those types of things. Initially, and still when we have funding, childcare has our Spark has a stipend for folks. So if you're going to commit that much time to learning how to run this business and provide this really vital community service, we want to compensate you for your time. And so previous funding sources have allowed us to do that. Previous funding sources have also allowed us to offer grants to help get folks' home up to passing licensing inspection. We currently don't have those anymore, and I'll talk a little bit about why that is. It also gives them support for navigating that licensing process, as well as then post-program support too. So we're still in contact with most of the folks who've gone through Spark over the last couple of years. Actually, Lisa, who is now on our team, was part of our original cohort, and something outside of her control kind of put the business to a close, but we're really glad to have her on the team now, really somebody who's lived through this program and can help others go through it. So as I mentioned, it's operated at the LSCP, but it is only successful because we have other partners. I, as an economic development organization, do not know how to run a childcare business. I don't know best practice early childhood education best practices, but Deb's team does. Our community foundation is also really pivotal to bringing money to the table to make sure that we have the funds to operate it. And then Marquette County has been a really huge partner of ours as well. So as I mentioned, we're a couple of years into Spark, and what I really wanted to focus on is what we've learned over the years, because I will tell you the model we started with is not the model that we have today. So when I first had those meetings in 2022, we were thinking, oh, this is a really great idea. We're going to create this in-person cohort model. People are going to show up every single week in Marquette County. By the way, Marquette County is the geographically largest county in the state of Michigan and one of the 10 largest east of the Mississippi River. So we are huge, and you can take over an hour to get across our county, and we don't have traffic. I mean, so that's just like normal driving time. It can take you that long to get through. So that proved to be very difficult for folks. We had planned for 12 in our initial cohort, ended up with 4 folks, but they got together every single week, right? And that was really nice. And they learned from each other, and they learned from not only our team, but others that we brought in to talk about things. We did quickly discover, though, that geographic distance was going to be an issue. So when we were accepting applications for it, we also did build equity into the program, saying, hey, if you were out in Republic and gas was going to be a problem to get you to these sessions, we would buy you gas cards and things like that to allow people to get into the city of Marquette. We had a $1,500 stipend at that point, so $500 given 3 times throughout the course, as well as a $5,000 mini grant program for those homes. And then that cohort, we spent a lot of time building all the foundational agreements, the grants agreements, all the protocols, how to handle mentorship. So a lot of that has evolved over time, but it took us almost, I would say, 6 months of really active engagement as a coalition to get all of that built. And then initially we had a part-time coordinator for the program. Our first one left us after about 2 months, I think partially because of the chaos, right, Deb? And so I think, but then we found Rebecca Dales, who some of you may know through her work. She stayed in the childcare field in a lot of ways. And she was with us for well over a year and helped build the original cohort of Spark, as well as ones that came after that. So you can see on the right there just some of those pictures from our sessions. That one on the right is at Marisa or ISD, and they were just learning together as cohorts. And then some of those folks made it pretty quickly through the process. We had ribbon cuttings, and in the bottom right, you can see that 3 of our original participants were recognized at the Community Foundation dinner in Marquette County for the incredible work of the program. However, following the initial cohort of the program, we definitely decided some changes were absolutely needed. So the first big change we made was moving to the online model, which is a little more flexible for folks, so they can either power through it pretty quick or they can take their time. We give folks up to 9 months to be in Spark from once you sign the agreement, so opening your childcare business, or at least until you're done with us. We also, over time, removed those grants for improvements. And there was 2 reasons for that. Number one, our funding ran out. That was kind of the obvious reason. But we also discovered that participants were relying on the grants too heavily. So they weren't planning out their financial projections. It was, oh, well, it's free money or I'm not touching it. So they didn't understand how to carry debt. They didn't understand how to go find cheaper financing or anything like that, because they were just relying on the grants. So ultimately, we had to do away with those. I think it's made the program a lot cleaner and easier to implement, quite frankly, because that was where almost all of our stressors came from, was that piece of the program. The other challenge that we've continued to face, of course, is advertising. And so I think there were some references to earlier sessions. A lot of it's informal. So we could advertise on TV and social and stuff, but working with our family networks, right? Working with existing providers, going through friends and family is how we found, or I guess how we found a fair number of our initial folks, people who are already in the pipeline, but how we think we're going to find future folks are through those initial or through those informal areas there. We were able to continue Spark all the way up until this past spring with the investment from Marquette County through ARPA funds. So they had dedicated $200,000 to childcare in the county. They gave us about $133,000 of that in the end to run Spark. So that included all of our grants. So that included the stipends for our mentors, for us to bring Rebecca on board, and others. That did ultimately end. And so at this point, then we did use funding from our original RCCC grant last year to keep Spark going for another 6 months. And we are now at a point where Spark is available, but not actively funded, but most of it can be done for free. So what not actively funded means is just there's no stipends and there's no grants, but all the content still exists. Lisa, as part of her job as our RCC coordinator, still walks people through Spark and helps them learn things. We have begun to explore new funding models, in particular one where we're working with our local employers who want to do something about childcare, but they don't want to open their own childcare business, so they don't want to have it on site. But some of them are very willing to basically provide a scholarship for somebody to go through Spark and learn how to do it. And then ideally say, okay, you're going to open this, you can have up to 12 kids. We want at least 10 of those slots, right? For our business, for our people to have priority. So we've had a number of businesses that are interested in that. So we're kind of mapping out what that would look like from an agreement standpoint. But we think that likely holds the most promise for the program going forward. And then there's just the challenges that we always like to make folks aware of. And I did see a comment in here. There is a manual for those of you who are curious. So we do have a how to build a Spark manual. It came from one of our original grants through the Community Foundation. It should be done. If it's not, it'll be done like next week. It's with my administrative assistant right now. He's doing his magic on formatting and making sure there's no typos. But we've had 6 really kind of key challenges I just encourage folks who are thinking about this to be aware of. Number one is funding. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody, right? We've had this evolving funding structure. I really am optimistic, though, about the engaging with businesses as a scholarship model. I think that'll really hopefully stabilize the program. Maintaining content has been really hard. I know a lot of you, this is not a shock to you, right? That the states changes links and they change guidance and laws and all that kind of stuff. And so just making sure that what we're providing to our participants is accurate has been challenging sometimes. Program staffing has also been hard because Spark ebbs and flows a lot. So sometimes we might have 3 or 4 people going through it, and it can actually be a lot of work to help them and get them through it. And other times we have nobody in it. We can't really maintain a permanent person for Spark. It typically just becomes part of someone's job. So tying it with the RCCC grants has been really helpful in stabilizing that to some degree because it doesn't take up a ton of time right now. But if we suddenly were to see a flood of folks come into Spark, we'd have to reassess that. Partnership maintenance is another one. Leaders change. I was watching Deb's reaction there. We announced 2 days ago that I'm leaving the CEO role here at the LSCP. And so she called me and gave me an earful last week. Or I called her, I guess, and got an earful, I should say. But partnership maintenance is, as I think many of you know, it's difficult sometimes, right? You do have those changes. Other priorities happen too. We had Spark, and then we started at the LSP Housing Initiative. We got $3 million for our airport. We're working on a healthcare initiative. So Spark has maintained one of those priorities for us. But I know other organizations, where things have shifted quite a bit. And so maybe it's not number one anymore. So just taking care of that. Licensing and inspections is the other big thing. I don't think I have to tell you this, but it takes a long time. And so I heard the fire inspector issue in particular come up in the initial chat on today. We don't control that. So we can have an incredible program through Spark, and they still might be waiting months to get basic inspections happening. And then recruitment of new participants, which I already talked about before. We had a good initial pipeline of folks who were already interested in creating these businesses. So Spark became that additional support for them. But now, how do we find others? In particular, because Spark is now UP-wide, there's some logistical challenges there too, but there's also a bigger pool of folks to be aware of. So we're working through what that looks like. We did just do a joint marketing effort with another similar program called Start Small up here in the Upper Peninsula. And Lisa had at least a few folks initially come through on that are looking at starting Spark. So we do know there's some success there, but I think we're definitely missing some areas. So I always show this picture because this is before this job gave me a lot of gray hair and wrinkles. I'm on the right there, but that is our coalition of folks who sat down in that room for hours and hours and hours, day over day, to build Spark and work through all those challenges. Spark's honestly not a program like a single entity can build, right? And that's sort of the beauty of it. So it's a real merger of economic development expertise and early childhood education expertise, and just good old community building, quite frankly. So It's replicable, I think, in any community, but it's going to look different in any community depending on what your priorities are and what your funding sources look like. So that is actually my last slide. I'm really trying to make up time for you, Joan. But happy to answer any questions, or I'll be in the break.
Yeah. Let's see if we have any top of mind questions before we start to segue into the breakout sessions. Anybody have a top of mind question for Christopher?
I do, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So Emily and I actually really appreciate all your work on this, because we do Spark down here in St. Joe County for our
Oh,
Sturgis
cool.
Area Community Foundation. Yeah, you were very, very helpful. And we have found the same things. But my question is, was there ever a thought to expand capacity with already licensed providers, just going from family to group?
We did have those conversations, and we also talked about whether we could expand to helping employers, right, create on-site. But we ultimately decided our own capacity just didn't allow us to do that. We would have to add new content and new approaches. And Deb, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's, I think, where we landed and why we didn't do it.
I think we wanted to start too with that home provider, getting someone comfortable with the 6. We had done surveys prior to us actually starting with Spark as a resource center. Are you ready to expand? And we did not have a lot of interest in that. We have a handful of group homes, but the majority of our sites in Marquette County are family homes. So we felt like that was the lowest hanging fruit, right? We could get in there and we could get those people engaged when we were having issues trying to get our families into groups. A lot of that has to do, again, with space, right? And staffing. I mean, as we all know, staffing is huge. So.
All right.
Thanks, Deb.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Region 1, for sharing your expertise. We're going to go ahead and shift right here very quickly into the breakout rooms. So we have 3 topics aligned with our presenters here today. So again, if you have multiple people from your region present, consider how you might split up. But I would say, and I want to let you know that Aaron and Jane and I, each one of us will be in one of these to take notes. We know that's a bit of a burden when we don't have a lot of time in breakout sessions. So we're going to be taking notes. We'll be able to share those back with people. So if you are here alone and can't go to all the sessions, you'll be able to look at some notes related to that. So we can go ahead and launch the breakouts. I want to say welcome back to everyone. I know that was a relatively brief, but hopefully helpful opportunity to be in breakout groups. I know I was taking frantic notes. I'm assuming my others were as well. So we'll put those together in some kind of a usable format. I know we asked our speaker in our room agreed to provide some follow-up resources. If anyone else is doing that, just make sure that they reach the Child Care Innovation Fund so that we can put them in the TA resource library and make them available to all of you. So I hope you'll join me in thanking again our presenters here today. I think they did a great job of giving us an overview of the different approaches that they are taking, and we had an opportunity really, I think, to learn directly from expert childcare business owners about like how they're approaching helping others, and a couple of different EDOs with very different situations and how they're doing that. So hopefully this has sparked some additional ideas for all of you. A couple of things that I want to make sure we do in closing that are critically important to us. Obviously, we want to remind you that we've got an upcoming PLC February 26th. Even more exciting, as a follow-up to this PLC, we have a webinar that the Child Care Back Office in Region 3 is going to present on. If you've heard bits and pieces here and there about the Child Care Back Office, but you'd really like to be able to ask in-depth questions and learn more about how your region might be able to connect to Child Care Back Office, or about what you might want to do in your own region, highly encourage you to attend the Child Care Back Office. A couple of actions that we really need you to take. One is we're really trying to get the Regional Child Care Coalition governance structure table completed. This is something that MyLeap has asked for, and we want to share it back with all of you. I can tell you there's a lot of work grouping work that's happening. People are starting to really structure their coalitions, which is great. Ideally, you would fill out that governance structure table no later than the end of January, and I would love it if you would do it sooner, so please prioritize that. And then please do complete our post-PLC survey. We can't be successful without your feedback, and I know that Jane is also going to put a link in the chat for that. There we go. Erin, any evaluation?
Yep, real quick, a couple people across the coalitions set up a quick call with me to think through ways that we could do better supports for work groups, not only facilitating action, but also tracking action and how that leads to changes. And so there's a small group that met. Jane and I met yesterday, actually, and had some really good ideas that we're creating some prototypes for. And so we want to bring back that initial group and anyone else who might be interested in helping to co-design this sometime next week, just to show what we're kind of cooking up, get some feedback so it can continue to develop. So if that's something you're interested in being a part of, can you put your email in the chat, and I'll send something out to you to join in. Again, it's creating some supports to not only help work groups and coalitions, but primarily work groups facilitate action, facilitate learning, and also integrate a way to easily track actions and small wins and small and systems changes within that. So exciting stuff. Awesome. I'm seeing the emails.
Excellent. Please also know we're thinking about doing a series of learning opportunities associated with this as well, to help strengthen the collaborative capacity, and in particular, helping to make sure that we're supporting members of our coalition to take action between meetings, because all of you, while you are mighty, obviously, to state the obvious, cannot do all the things that need to be done to move this regional work forward. And so it truly is necessary to include coalition members in that work. So with that, I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and we greatly appreciate your time, your attention. Sorry, something else, Erin?
Just don't close the chat, because I haven't written everyone's name down and I don't want it to go away. Thank you.
All right, I will keep it open. All right, so take care. We will see you soon. Please reach out if you'd like to have any additional TA or questions. Happy to receive them at any time. Take care, everybody.